There was a boy who lived in a quiet town. Nothing much ever happened there. The streets were small, the people were simple, and life moved slow. But inside this boy's heart, there was a storm of dreams that no one could see every day after. School, when the sun began to set and the air turned cooler, he would sit by his tiny window with an old guitar on his lap. The guitar wasn't new, it was worn out, with a few scratches and missing strings. Yet to him, it was his most prized treasure. He would pluck the strings gently. Even when some didn't play right, he didn't mind. He just wanted to hear music. For him, music was a way to speak when words failed. It was his secret world where he wasn't just a quiet, awkward boy, but someone who could feel alive. Free and heard, he wrote small songs in a notebook, songs about his feelings, his fears, and his hopes. He imagined one day standing on a stage, playing his songs, and people listening, truly listening. But outside his window, the world wasn't kind. When he tried to share his music at school, the other kids didn't understand. They laughed when he sang. Some made fun of his voice. Others mocked his cheap guitar. They called him silly, said he wasn't good enough, that he should just stop dreaming. Every insult felt like a heavy stone in his chest. But even when he felt like giving up, he couldn't stop playing. His hands would always find the guitar. His mind would always hear melodies. His family wasn't supportive either. His father believed that music was just a waste of time. He would tell the boy to focus on studies, get a proper job in the future. His mother, though gentle, worried that music would only bring him disappointment. They didn't see any future in songs or guitars. They wanted him to follow the path that everyone in town followed: work, earn, and survive. The boy tried to fit in. He tried to ignore the songs in his head, but it was useless. When he walked to school, he heard rhythms in the sound of his steps. When the rain fell, he heard music in every drop. It was like the world itself was trying to tell him to keep going. Even when no one else believed, late at night, when everyone was asleep, he would light a small candle and practice in secret. His fingers would hurt, his voice would crack, but he didn't stop. He told himself that maybe one day someone would. Listen, just one person who would understand, and that would be enough. He held on to that hope like it was a tiny flame in a dark room. There was a small park near his house where sometimes he'd sit and play quietly, hoping no one was watching. But deep down, he wanted someone to hear him. He wanted someone to say, "That's beautiful." But the park was often empty. The only ones who listened were the birds and the wind. Still, he played for them. He played for himself, because if he didn't, it felt like a part of him would disappear. One day, while playing in the park, a group of kids from his school passed by. They recognized him and stopped. Instead of listening, they laughed louder than ever. One of them said, "Why do you keep trying?" No one wants to hear that noise. The boy's face turned red. His hands froze. He wanted to disappear. After they left, he sat there in silence, his guitar resting on his knees. But that night, instead of crying, he picked up his notebook and wrote a song. The words came out easily. It was a song about feeling invisible, about wanting to be heard, about not giving up. He sang it to himself, and though his voice was shaky, the feelings were real. And that gave him courage, the boy knew. He wasn't perfect. His voice wasn't smooth. His guitar was old. And his songs were simple, but his heart was full of stories, and that was something no one could take away from him. He told himself that even if the world kept saying he wasn't good enough, he would keep singing because the music made him feel alive as the days passed. He promised himself he would get better. He would practice until his fingers bled if he had to. He would write songs that mattered. And one day, the same people who laughed would listen, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. He didn't know how or when, but he believed that his music would find a way, and so the boy with a dream kept playing, kept writing, and kept believing, even when no one else did. Because deep down he knew that sometimes the loudest voice isn't the one that shouts, but the one that keeps singing, even when the world tries to silence it. The boy's heart was still holding on to hope. But hope can feel fragile when the world keeps trying to crush it. He thought, maybe, just maybe, things would change if he showed people what he could really do. He heard about the school's annual talent show. It was the perfect chance. His mind pictured the stage, the bright lights, the crowd cheering as he sang his own song. For weeks, he practiced every night. His voice got stronger. His fingers moved faster over the guitar strings. He even wrote a special song just for that day. It was his story about dreaming when no one believes in you, about feeling small in a loud world, but standing up anyway. He memorized every word, every chord. His heart burned with excitement. Maybe this was it. Maybe they would finally see him. The night of the talent show came. Backstage was loud with chatter. Kids laughed, shared jokes. Some were dressed in shiny clothes. Others practiced dance steps. The boy stood in a corner, clutching his old guitar. His clothes were simple, his hands trembled, but he kept whispering to himself, "You can do this." When his name was called, his stomach flipped, but he walked onto the stage. The bright lights blinded him for a moment, but then he saw the crowd, and in the middle, he recognized the faces, the same classmates who laughed at him in the park. Their eyes locked on him, some whispering, some chuckling already. His throat went dry, his fingers shook, but he remembered his song. He took a deep breath and started playing. The guitar's sound was shaky at first, but he found his rhythm. Then his voice came, soft but growing stronger with every line. He poured his heart into every word, hoping someone out there was listening, really listening. But before he even finished the first chorus, the laughter started, loud, sharp, and cruel. It wasn't just whispers anymore. Some kids in the back started mimicking his singing in a mocking tone. Others made jokes. Someone shouted, "Sing something we actually want to hear." The boy's heart sank, but he kept going, trying to drown their voices with his own, but it was no use. The noise got louder, the laughter sharper. His hands faltered, his voice cracked, and he stopped mid-song. The room filled with more laughter. His cheeks burned with shame. He wanted to run off the stage, but his feet wouldn't move. For a moment, he stood there, staring at the crowd, the faces blurry through his tears. The microphone in front of him felt like a wall he couldn't climb. The teacher backstage waved at him to come off. Slowly, he walked off the stage. Each step heavier than the last. Behind the curtain, he stood, alone, his guitar hanging by his side. He could still hear them laughing, even after he left. His dreams felt crushed, like a flower stepped on too many times. He sat in the corner backstage, hiding his face in his arms. He thought maybe they were right. Maybe he wasn't good enough. The next day at school was worse. Whispers followed him down the hallways. Kids laughed behind his back, some to his face. "What a nice concert," one said. "My ears still hurt," another joked. He pretended not to hear. But every word was a needle to his heart. Even the teachers didn't say anything. No comfort, no encouragement, just silence. He felt invisible, or worse, a joke, at home. He didn't touch his guitar for days. It sat in the corner, gathering dust. Every time he looked at it, he felt the sting of that night. The laughter, the shame. His father didn't mention the show. His mother gave him a sad look but said nothing. The house felt colder, quieter, but one night something changed. He couldn't sleep. The words from that song he wrote kept repeating in his mind, the part where he sang about standing up even when people push you down. He thought, if he truly believed in that song, how could he let it end like this? He got up, walked to the corner, and picked up the guitar. His fingers were stiff, his voice weak. But he started playing the same song, slower this time, gentler. He didn't care if his voice cracked, or if the guitar was still out of tune. He sang just for himself. And as he sang, he felt lighter, like the weight of their laughter couldn't reach him here. In his small room, under the quiet glow of a single lamp, he realized something that night. They could laugh, they could mock, but they couldn't stop him from singing. They couldn't take his music away unless he let them, and he wouldn't. Not anymore. He promised himself that he would keep playing, keep writing, not for them, but for himself, because deep down, he knew his voice mattered, even if no one else could hear it yet. And with that promise, the boy picked up his notebook, flipped to a fresh page, started writing a new song, a song not about giving up, but about standing tall, even when the World tries to break you, because the story wasn't over, it was just beginning. The boy's world outside was harsh, but inside his home, things were not much easier. His family cared for him, but their care came wrapped in worry and doubt. His father, a man of few words and strong opinions, often told him music won't put food on the table. His voice was firm, as if saying it again and again would make it true. His father wanted him to be practical, to focus on a steady job, not chase what seemed like a childish dream. His mother, gentle but tired from years of struggle, hoped he would choose safety over passion. She worried about the loneliness he faced and the pain of being rejected. She didn't understand his music the way he did. To her, it was noise that kept him from finding real success. Sometimes she would sigh quietly, afraid to hurt him with words but unable to hide her fear. The boy listened, trying to explain that music was more than just sound. It was his way to live, to express what he felt inside. But their eyes only showed concern, and their words didn't change.
Ow.
They want to stay alone with the rules, get a job, settle down. One evening, after a long day of school and the sting of laughter still fresh in his mind, he sat at the dinner table hoping for a kind word or some encouragement. But instead, his father looked up from his plate and said, "Why don't you think about finding a real job? Music won't pay the bills." The words hit harder than the boy expected. He swallowed his pride and said softly, "I want to try. Just one more time?" His mother looked at him, eyes filled with worry. "Son, we only want what's best for you," she said. But the boy felt alone. Like no one really understood the fire inside him that night, he sneaked out to the small park with his guitar, his only safe place. The stars were bright, and the cool breeze whispered around him. He played quietly, trying to calm the storm inside. He thought about his parents' words and the doubts that surrounded him like shadows. But then he reminded himself why he started. Because music was the only thing that made him feel alive sometimes. The boy wondered if he was chasing an impossible dream, if the world was right and he wasn't good enough. But every time he thought that way, a small voice inside told him to keep going, to fight even harder at school. He tried to hide his sadness behind a weak smile, but his classmates noticed the change. They saw a boy who didn't give up, even after being laughed at, and that surprised some of them. A few started to listen, quietly, unsure how to show it. One day a girl from his class came up to him during lunch. Shy but kind, she said, "Your song the other day. It was sad, but beautiful." The boy blinked. Surprised, someone noticed. She smiled. "Maybe you should sing more." For us, those words felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. A small sign that maybe things could change, but the boy didn't tell his family about the girl's words. He wasn't ready to face more questions and doubts at home. Instead, he kept his music a secret, writing new songs in his notebook, playing in the park after dark, and dreaming of a day when his family would see him for who he really was, not just who they wanted him to be. As the days passed, the boy learned something important. Sometimes the people closest to you don't understand your dreams, and that's okay. Their doubts aren't the end of the road. They are just bumps. On the path, the boy decided he would carry his dream himself, even if it meant walking alone for a while. One night he found an old photo of a musician he admired. Someone who started with nothing but a dream and a guitar. He looked at the picture, feeling a quiet strength growing inside. If that musician could do it, maybe he could too, he whispered to himself. Don't stop no matter what. And with that promise, he picked up his guitar and played Under the Stars, his song full of hope and stubborn courage. The boy knew the journey ahead would be hard, but for the first time he felt ready to face it, with music as his guide and his heart as his compass. He would prove that sometimes dreams are worth fighting for, even when the world says they're impossible. The boy's days were filled with quiet struggle. But one afternoon changed everything. It happened when he was playing his guitar in the corner of the town's small park. the same park where he often came to escape. To practice and to dream, that day an old man walked by. His hair white and eyes bright with wisdom. The boy noticed him stop, listen, and watch carefully. The old man's face held a gentle smile, but his eyes showed he was serious. When the boy finished his song, the old man walked up slowly, his steps calm and steady. "You have a gift," he said softly, "but you're holding back." The boy blinked in surprise. No one had ever said that before, especially not someone he didn't know. The old man introduced himself as someone who had spent his life in music, not as a famous star, but as a teacher, a guide, someone who helped others find their voice. He told the boy that raw talent was important, but learning how to share it with the world was the real challenge. Music is about feelings, the old man explained, not just notes at first. The boy was shy, unsure if he could trust this stranger. But something in the old man's words and kind smile made him believe. For the first time, he had found someone who saw the real music inside him, not just the mistakes, not just the shy boy with an old guitar, but a young artist waiting too. Sheen, the old man invited the boy to meet him regularly, to practice together, to learn not only how to play better, but how to feel the music, how to tell stories with sound. Every meeting was a new lesson. How to control his voice, how to hold the guitar, how to listen deeply to the world around him. Slowly, the boy's confidence grew. His music became stronger, softer, more honest. He learned to play with emotion, not just notes. The old man taught him that mistakes were part of the journey, that every crack in his voice was a story to tell, not something to hide. One evening, after weeks of practice, the old man handed the boy a small notebook. "Write your story here," he said. "Every song starts with a truth." The boy took it carefully, feeling a new sense of purpose. He began to write down his thoughts, his feelings, his dreams. Filling pages with words and music, the town started to notice a change too. The boy wasn't just playing in secret anymore. He began to play softly in the park during the day. People stopped to listen, curious about the music that carried both sadness and hope. A few smiled, a few nodded, and that made the boy's heart race with a new kind of hope. But it wasn't just about the music. The old man taught the boy about life, about courage, about facing fear and not giving up. "The world will try to silence you," the old man said one day, "but your music is your voice, and your voice matters." The boy listened carefully, knowing these words would stay with him forever. As the boy practiced under the open sky, the stars began to feel closer, like they were watching and encouraging him. He dreamed bigger now, imagining not just the park, but a real stage with real lights and real people who cared. And with each note, he felt a little stronger, a little braver. The boy's journey was no longer just about proving others wrong. It was about finding himself. And with the old man's guidance, he finally believed that his dream was possible, and not because the world told him so, but because he knew it. Deep inside, one afternoon, as they sat together by the river, the old man said, "Your song will change more than your life. It will change the hearts of those who hear it." And the boy smiled, ready for whatever came next, knowing he wasn't alone anymore. The day had finally come. The boy's heart was pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. It was the night of the local talent show, a small event in the town's community hall. But to the boy, it felt like the biggest stage in the world. Weeks of practice with the old man had led to this moment. He held his guitar tightly, the strings still worn, but now sounding clearer. Backstage, the room buzzed with noise, kids and teens laughing, warming up, practicing. Some dressed in flashy clothes, others nervously pacing. The boy stood quietly in a corner, his hands shaking but his mind focused. He thought about everything, the laughter, the doubt, the long nights of practice, and most of all, the promise he made to himself to never give up when the announcer called his name. The boy took a deep breath and walked toward the stage. The bright lights hit his face, and the crowd came into view. Rows of chairs filled with townspeople, some curious, some familiar, and in the front, the very classmates who once mocked him. Their eyes cold and expectant. For a moment, fear wanted to stop him. His legs felt weak. But he remembered the old man's advice: play for yourself, not for them. He adjusted the microphone, strummed the first chord, the sound soft but steady. Then he began to sing, his voice shaky at first, but growing stronger with every word. He sang about the pain of being laughed at, about the nights spent dreaming alone, about the fire inside that refused to die. The song was raw and honest, not perfect, but real, and the crowd listened, some leaning forward, others closing their eyes, as if they were hearing the boy's heart. Suddenly, the laughter and whispers from before were gone, replaced by silence, a silence so deep it felt like the world had stopped just to listen. The boy's voice carried through the room, each note filled with emotion, each word telling his story by the time he finished. The crowd was quiet for a moment, and then, slowly, the applause began. It started with a few claps, then grew louder and louder, filling the hall, even some of the classmates who once mocked him stood and joined in, their faces showing surprise and respect. The boy's heart soared. He smiled shyly, feeling a warmth he had never known before. He realized that for the first time, his music had touched others. Backstage, the old man waited with a proud smile. "You did it," he said simply. The boy nodded, still catching his breath. That night was more than just a performance. It was a turning point, a proof that he could stand tall, despite the doubts. After the show, people came up to him, praising his courage and honesty. Some asked when he would sing again. A local radio host even invited him to play on the air. The boy felt a new world opening, full of possibility, but he also knew this was just the beginning. That night, as he lay in bed, the boy thought about everything he had been through. The struggles, the loneliness, the doubts, but also the music that never left him. He felt grateful for the chance to share his voice. And more determined than ever to keep singing, he understood now that music wasn't just about being perfect or popular. It was about telling the truth inside, about reaching out to others who felt lost or unheard. And he wanted to be that voice, not just for himself, but for anyone who needed hope. The boy promised himself that no matter what came next, he would keep playing, keep dreaming, because this was his path. And he had finally found the courage to walk it after his first performance. The boy thought the hardest part was over, but what came next surprised him more than anything else. Word about his song spread quickly through the town. People began talking, not just about the music, but about the story behind it. The boy who kept dreaming even when no one believed. A few days later, he was invited to perform at a community gathering. This time, the stage was bigger, the crowd larger, and the eyes watching him filled with curiosity. Some were kind, others still doubtful. But the boy was ready. He had practiced harder than ever, and this time, he wasn't just singing, he was telling his truth as he stepped onto the stage. The bright lights warmed his face, and the crowd hushed. A deep silence fell over the room. The boy strummed his guitar gently, then began his song. It was the same one he had written in the darkest moments, but now his voice was stronger. Filled with passion and pain, the room was still at first, then slowly the faces in the crowd began to change. Eyes that once mocked now softened. Some wiped away tears, others nodded in understanding. The boy's music reached into their hearts, breaking through walls built by doubt and fear. Midway through the song, a group of boys who had laughed at him before sat frozen, their smiles gone, replaced by surprise and shame. They couldn't ignore the power of the boy's voice, the honesty. In his words, it was a silence that spoke louder than any insult. When the last note faded, the room stayed quiet for a moment, as if the world was holding its breath. Then slowly, applause began to rise, gentle at first, then growing louder and louder until it filled every corner of the hall. People stood, clapped, and cheered. The boy's heart swelled with a joy he had never known. He looked out at the crowd and saw not just strangers, but people who had opened their hearts, the same people who had told him he wasn't good enough. Now listening, really listening, it was a moment of victory, not just for him, but for everyone who had ever felt small and unheard. After the performance, several people approached him, offering kind words and encouragement. One woman said, "Your song reminded me to never give up." Another told him, "You have a gift that can inspire many." The boy smiled shyly, feeling a new confidence growing inside. The old man who had guided him was there too, his eyes shining with pride. "This is just the beginning," he whispered. "Your music will change lives." The boy nodded, knowing the road ahead was still long. But feeling stronger than ever before that night, as he lay in bed, the boy thought about the power of his song, how it had changed the silence into applause, the doubt into belief. He realized that music wasn't just sound, it was a way to connect, to heal, to fight. He knew there would still be challenges, still moments of fear. But the song had given him a new voice, one that no one could take away, and he promised to keep singing, not just for himself, but for anyone who needed to hear that they were enough. With hope in his heart, the boy closed his eyes and dreamed of the future, a future where his music would travel far and wide, touching lives, breaking barriers, and proving that sometimes the quietest voices carry the strongest songs. The morning after his powerful performance, the boy woke to buzzing excitement. His phone lit up with messages and missed calls. Invitations to sing on the local radio and appear at a community event filled his screen. He felt a mixture of joy and nerves as he read each message. This was more than he ever dreamed, but he still worried if he was ready. He packed his guitar carefully, ran his fingers over its worn wood, and reminded himself that every note he played carried his story. At the small radio station, he sat in a bright room, headphones heavy on his ears. The host smiled warmly and said, "We heard your song, and we want everyone to hear it." The boy took a deep breath, strummed the first chord live on air, and sang with all his heart, his voice stronger than ever. Calls poured in from listeners who felt moved by his words. They shared their own stories of struggle and hope. The boy realized his music had become a bridge between his world and theirs, a way to connect hearts across the airwaves. Next, a local music lounge invited him to play on a weekend open mic night. The crowd was bigger and more varied: students, shopkeepers, families, and even a few strangers who had heard him on the radio. As he stepped on stage, he felt the same flutter of nerves. But this time, he remembered how far he had come. His song filled the room again, and for the first time, he saw tears of joy, nods of respect, and smiles of encouragement. The applause that followed felt like a wave lifting him higher. Soon after, a small recording. The studio offered him time to make a demo. He sat in a cozy booth, headphones on, as a gentle engineer guided him through each take. The boy sang his song again and again, until every note carried the truth of his journey. When he heard the playback, crisp and clear, he almost couldn't believe it was his own voice. He thought back to the old guitar in the park, and the cruel laughter that once silenced him, now replaced by music that opened doors he never imagined. With the demo in hand, invitations came for larger shows in nearby towns. He traveled with the old man who believed in him from the start. Every new stage felt both exciting and humbling. He saw faces in the crowd that reminded him of home, and faces that knew only his music. Through it all, the boy stayed true to himself. Writing songs in the same small notebook, playing quietly under the stars when he needed to remember why he began. He never forgot the nights of doubt, or the power of a single song to change a life. As the doors opened wider, he embraced each opportunity with gratitude, sharing his message of hope and resilience wherever he went. The boy who was once told he wasn't good enough had finally proved the world wrong. And he knew this was only the beginning of a journey that would keep inspiring others to sing their own stories. His message to the world standing on a broad stage under warm lights, the boy who had once been told he wasn't good enough felt a quiet pride swell in his chest. His fingers curled gently around the microphone as he prepared to speak to thousands of eager faces. He looked out and saw not strangers, fellow dreamers, each with their own hopes and doubts. He began with a soft voice. "I was laughed at. I was told to stop dreaming, but I kept singing, and in that moment, every word carried the weight of his journey, from secret songs in a dusty park to standing here with the world listening." He shared how each crack in his voice was part of his story, how every setback taught him to rise stronger, and he urged the crowd to hold tight to their own dreams, to turn failures into fuel. Then he sang a new song, one brimming with hope and defiance, a melody that reached beyond the stage and into hearts. The notes soared like birds finally freed from cages, and for a while the world seemed to pause, to breathe with him. When the last chord faded, an eruption of applause filled the air. But he raised his hand for silence. "This isn't just my song," he said. "It's ours." And he told them to sing their truths, to chase their passions, and to believe that even the smallest voice can echo around the world. As he stepped back, the lights dimmed, but his message stayed bright, that courage grows in the face of doubt, that art can heal, and that every person has a song worth sharing. And with that, the boy who once hid in shadows left a legacy of hope that would inspire generations to come.